Hi guys, I'm Gasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times. Today with my mug and my shirt, I am channeling my inner nerd for Stranger Things while we still wait for our next season. So today's video, as you have seen in the title, is going to be centered on PG-13 horror.
It's coffee time.
So as many of you guys know, I do have another channel in which I talk about horror movies, and there's always this big discussion about PG-13 horror, if it's as good as, R-rated and all of those things. And there are many good PG-13 movies out there, as well as there are many nice, interesting YA horror books. So I'm here to recommend you some YA horror. Alright, so before we jump into our list of 10 recommendations, I have combined the books a little bit with some themes, with some movies, and I hope that there's going to be something for everybody. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and also hit the notification bell if you love horror and books. So PG-13 is basically just telling parents to be a little bit cautious about the content, because some of the content that is included in that specific movie might not be suitable for viewers under 13 years old. In a similar way, YA, young adult fiction, it is books that are considered for readers between 12 and 18 years old. So anything under 12, these books might be a little bit too much. This is because the PG-13 movies or the YA books might contain things like strong language, some sex, some violent scenes, and also of course some drug abuse, which are themes and topics that are not recommended for readers under 13 years old. When it comes to horror YA, it is very interesting because most of the horror YA stories do include your typical tropes and cliches that you can expect from YA books, including sometimes even romance. And this might be something that might bother some people, but for me, a really good written YA doesn't have to be extremely gory, it doesn't have to be extremely scary. I'm just looking for a nice spooky story. As always, for me, the important thing is to relate to the characters, to have a good story, a good plot, some twists, some turns, and that is actually all that I want. I don't always need blood and guts, even though that is mostly my preference because I just have a lot of fun with it. But I know you guys are always looking for books that are not too extreme, so this list is going to be great for those people. Our first recommendation takes us to the world of the paranormal, to the supernatural, to something that has been kind of revived in the last years thanks to the Conjuring universe franchise. However, this first book recommendation, I would say, is something more similar to Paranormal Activity, because it could be the equivalent of a found footage movie, just in this case we have a book. Diary of a Hunting by M. Verano opens a trilogy. In this book, we're going to find a story that is being told from pictures and pieces of diary and letters from our main character, and this very specific way of editing and format that the book has, it's what gives us this kind of found footage formula. So Paige is struggling with her parents' divorce, and the mom buys a new creepy old house, and she already had enough with the divorce, and now she's being moved into this house that she finds really creepy. There's like bugs, there is like flies and things around the house, but that is not the worst thing. The worst thing is that really inexplicable things start to happen. Some items seem to multiply. There are writings on the wall that just appear, and her younger brother starts to act really weird in the middle of the night. It is a compelling story. It is sinister and it is creepy. However, it is also a story that has this specific format that might not be for everybody, but I always loved books and stories told through pieces of letters and pictures and things like that. This also has a twisty ending. It might be something that might be predictable for a lot of people, but it's still a nice, interesting trilogy. Also, I'm so sorry for the rain again, but it is currently raining outside, so just take it as a moody kind of recommendation video with some nice rain atmosphere. So our next recommendation is going to be a mystery thriller, and I decided to pick this specific one because it has been adapted by Netflix and it is supposed to still come out before the end of the year if we are lucky. So if you have not read the book yet, you might want to do it before Netflix releases the movie. That is There Is Someone Inside Your House by Stephanie Perkins. I think this is a book that has divided a lot of people. A lot of people loved it, a lot of people hated it, but in this list there's going to be books, of course, that people have different opinions on. I'm just here giving you some suggestions of books that you might enjoy. In this particular one, we have Makani. She moves from Hawaii to Nebraska, and she's already having again trouble adapting, which is, you know, one of those tropes from YA books. And in this case, things even get worse because people from her school, her classmates, start to die one after the other one. This was a fast-paced, easy to read suspense book, and it does include as well a biracial main character, as well as one of the friends that is trans, so we have some representation as well in the book. Now let's move to one of my favorite subgenres of horror, and that is slashers. There is something so comforting about a good slasher story, and you guys know that last year there is a book that came out in summer that I absolutely loved and adored, and I have to mention it again because it is summer again, and I feel like this is going to be perfect for people that are looking for a fun slasher, and that is Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar. You know, guys, I've been talking about this book endlessly because it was just such a great surprise. It's just one of those that is just there to have fun and enjoy. Queen and her father moved to Kettle Springs, a really teeny tiny town, and things get a little bit weird when they realize that actually the two generations in this little town, the elderly and the younger ones, are kind of in a war against each other because they have really different opinions about the future. Now everything is really going to turn into a bloodbath when one mysterious killer dressed up as a clown starts slashing the kids of this town. The book might start a little bit slow paced, but once hits the fan, it's not gonna stop. It's gonna be a roller coaster. It's gonna be so much fun, and as you can tell by the title, we have a lot of fun inside of a cornfield, and cornfields is just something that I absolutely love and adore since I enjoyed Stephen King's Children of the Corn, and so I think that's also part of why I love this one so much. But definitely recommend it to you guys if you're just looking for a fun slasher. We are jumping now to one of the most well-known hunting stories, paranormal stories in the horror universe in general, something that actually happened, or it's claimed that happened in real life, and that is the Amityville story. The book is called Amity by Mikkel Osto, and this is going to be perfect for people that love stories told from different perspectives, because here we're following two families and how their lives change once they move to this haunted house, and the teenagers that move in there starts to experience like nightmares and bad dreams, and weird things start to happen to them. We will be discovering the secrets of this house, but I do feel like as a reader you would benefit if you are either familiar with the story of Amityville, or if you've already watched the first Amityville movie and are kind of more familiar with it. I do believe that the author did a lot of good research, and we can see that he implemented a lot of historical backgrounds in the story that I really appreciated as well. So if you're a fan of, you know, Amityville in general, you might want to check it out. If you're looking for something a little bit more intense, a little bit more gory, and a little bit more in the psychological side of things, I also got you here. I have for you Scholar by Daniel Kraus. 19-year-old Rai lives with his mom and his sister in a dying farm, and he still is kind of trying to process all of the abuse that he received from his father. When something happens one day, there is this meteor that falls from the sky, but with it also comes a really interesting, ruthless man. So as I mentioned, this story is a lot into the psychological side of things, so it might not be considered as much horror as other stories, but it is quite intense. It is graphic, it is disturbing, and it is dark, so I believe this is going to be for people that are more comfortable with this kind of topics, and not for the faint of heart. If you're looking for a creepy, a kind of unsettling story that involves some secrets from some events that happened in your childhood, this is the one for you. I personally love books in which something happened in the past and in the future the character kind of tries to relive it to know exactly what happened, and more things start to being revealed. So that is the case for our next book. We have Little Creeping Things by Chelsea Icasso, and in this story we are going to follow Cassidy. When she was a kid, she accidentally set a fire that killed her neighbor, and it was always said that it was accidental. However, you guys know how children are, so there was this beautiful but ruthless bully at school called Melody, and she basically blamed her all her life for what happened. And we are now into the future with a teenager, Cassidy, and Melody happens to disappear. So Cassidy is scared to go to the police because of course she's always hated Melody for all that she put her through when she was a kid. But she also receives a very mysterious message, so Cassidy is going to be forced to investigate. This was a debut YA thriller that was fast-paced, action-packed, and really entertaining. For our next recommendation, we are going to touch one of those old themes in horror stories, which is ghosts, and also something similar to the TV show Supernatural that I absolutely love and adore, and how dangerous sometimes it can be to take over your parents' business when that is related to basically the supernatural. We have here a duology by Kendare Blake, and the first book here is called Anna Dressed in Blood. So the family of Cass has always been kind of a ghost hunter family. They've always located, investigated, and released, killed the ghosts. Now Cass has to take over the family business after his father died in an accident while he was trying to kill a ghost. So together with his kitchen witch mother and a cat that has a kind of smell for spirits, they are going to solve mysterious huntings to locate ghosts and basically hunt them and kill them. That is until they come across a very specific ghost that is going to put their lives in danger. Now, even though this book might not be particularly scary, it does have a really nice atmosphere and it is a fun ghost story. It does have, however, I have to say here, some of the typical tropes like insta-love, so just putting it out there for you guys in case that is a deal breaker for you. Another classic theme for horror stories has always been stories about witches. Now, witches in horror are kind of more into the paranormal, and also they tend to include a lot of fantasy because of the magic. So our next recommendation is kind of a fantasy horror, and this one I chose specifically because it is by a Latina author and it includes a bisexual main character, so we also get some representation here, and it is also a trilogy, so you're gonna have 3 books here in case that you're interested. We have Labyrinth Lost by Zoraida Cordova, and in this book we follow Alex. She is a teenage witch and she just doesn't want to have these powers anymore, so she performs a spell to get rid of her powers. However, this spell goes really wrong, and instead of getting rid of her powers, she gets rid of her family. They all just vanish, and that's when her story begins, looking for her family. And she ends up going to the realm between the living and the dead. And I have to say that this story is not so strong when it comes to the character development. I think the characters could have used a little bit more of depth. However, the magic and the world building is really satisfying, and I really enjoyed it because of that. Even though it has some tropes as well, I believe if you also love books about good friendships and really nice family dynamics and family strength, you might really enjoy this one. Also, if you've enjoyed the show, the TV show Charmed, maybe you would like to give the first book a try. Sometimes the paranormal or supernatural stories that we find in horror also give our characters some special powers or forces, and that is where I got the inspiration for our next book recommendation. This is an old book that I don't think many people know of, and it is by a UK author that apparently is really well known in the UK, but I've never really seen people mentioning this author in their videos, so maybe this could be a potentially new discovery for you guys. It's called The Staff of Nightmares by Mallory Blackman, and in the story we follow Kyle. He is on a school trip, but they have a really bad accident, a bad crash, and everybody dies except of him. He is the only survivor, but not only that, he realizes that he's able to slip into the mind of the corpses. Now, this is a very particular story because it is told through a main story and 10 small short stories, and each of those stories is kind of like a dream sequence, kind of like a nightmare. So of course there's going to be some that are stronger than others, but they all have really cool endings. And as I sometimes like to do, I have decided that the last book in this recommendation video should be an anthology of short horror stories, and I came across one that just sounded so extremely interesting that even though I have not read this one yet, I knew that I had to include it in this list for you guys. That is A Banquet for Hungry Ghosts by Ying Chang Compestein, and this is a book that is going to combine horror stories, like ghost horror stories, with food recipes, and it has really good representation from the Chinese culture, which I thought was also something really interesting. And again, I've never heard anybody mentioning this book before, so I thought it would be a great thing to bring it up in this video in case you also guys had no idea that this book existed. So these are all stories, ghost stories, that are based on Chinese mythology, and the word hungry has kind of like a double meaning. It's either because the person died hungry, or kind of have some unfinished business because they died kind of in an unjustified way. So the 8 stories are organized in appetizers, main course, and dessert, and I absolutely love that idea. And each story is going to come together with some recipe that kind of helps to explain, as far as I understand, the lore behind the ghost story. So the 8 short horror stories are organized in appetizers, main course, and dessert, which I think is fantastic. And also each ghost story is going to have a little kind of explanation on the cultural thing that inspired the story, and also a recipe. So you're gonna get a short horror story with some explanation on the cultural background of it, and a recipe. So this just sounds like a lot of fun. Alright you guys, so these were my 10 PG-13/YA book recommendations for you. I hope that you found something here that you have never heard of, or maybe I reminded you of a book that you wanted to check out some time ago and you forgot about it. So let me know down below also, what are your recommendations to me when it comes to YA horror? Is there anything that you think I have to to check out. As always, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Please give the video a big thumbs up for support, and I hope to see you all guys as always in our next coffee time. Bye.